Timothy and Emily had been in a relationship for 6 years, 3 of which they were married. Before getting married, Timothy had bought a nice 2-bedroom apartment in an upscale part of town, intending to start a family. He was always ready for a serious relationship. Casual dating didn't particularly interest him. The apartment became their shared home, in which they both resided. Both Timothy and Emily were employed. Timothy worked a standard 5-day work week in an office, and Emily had a shift schedule at a beauty salon. On one of their usual weekends, the couple planned to go for a walk in the park. However, as Emily was getting all ready in the hallway, Timothy's phone rang. Apologizing, he answered the call in the other room. A few minutes later, he returned with a sullen look. "Edward's in trouble again. He's coming to stay with us for a couple days to take care of some business in town. I hope you don't mind," Timothy shared with his wife. Although Emily wasn't thrilled about the unexpected visit, she decided not to mind since talking about Timothy's brother usually led to arguments. Emily thought it was important to help others, especially family members, and noted that Timothy himself had never reached out to his brother for help, even when it was needed. Timothy always treated his older brother well, helping him in difficult situations without being asked. However, Edward did not show much gratitude in return. This situation came about because Edward was adopted at the age of 5 after his parents faced infertility issues. When their biological child was finally born, the parents' attention and care was directed primarily towards him, which caused a sense of rivalry between the brothers from an early age. Despite this, it wasn't as if the parents loved their sons unequally, but rather showed unique care. Timothy seemed to be loved more, praised for his performance in school, and sometimes even held up as a role model, much to the latter's annoyance. The older brother was jealous of any successes of the younger. As they got older, the situation diffused somewhat, but the general dynamic persisted. Edward visited them a week later. He assured them that his business in town would only take a few days, and he wouldn't bother them for a long time. Emily found that she liked Edward at first sight. In person, she no longer felt the animosity she had harbored toward him after her husband's stories. He was an interesting conversationalist, sharing fascinating stories from his life, and Emily found herself enchanted by his stories. As time passed, the week turned into a couple of days, and the older brother showed no signs of leaving. His presence gradually softened Timothy's wife's opinion of Edward. One day, when Timothy was away at work and his wife had the day off, Edward suggested that they rent a car and take a trip out of town. Emily readily agreed. As they drove past a secluded beach on the lake on a hot summer afternoon, they exchanged glances and smiles. Edward noticed Emily's approval and turned toward the body of water. Without realizing it themselves, they began swimming and playfully splashing water at each other. At one point, the situation got heated to the point where they kissed unexpectedly. The moment passed quickly, and Emily retreated to the shore in confusion. The tension lingered for the entire return trip, and both were silent. Not knowing how to behave, Emily decided to spend the next day off with her friends at their favorite cafe for brunch. In the morning, she quickly packed her things and left the house without speaking to anyone. On her way to a friend's house, she sent her husband a text message declaring her love. She still felt guilty about kissing his brother. Around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, she returned home and found her husband not home. She quietly went to the kitchen to get a drink of water, and then decided to freshen up in the shower after the hot day. She was alone until Edward came home about 10 minutes later, looking like he'd just been to the gym. Emily hurried to her room to get dressed, so that she wouldn't have to face Edward in just a towel. She quickly put on her dress and started to leave the room. Just as she was about to open the door, she noticed Edward standing on the threshold of the bedroom, as if about to knock. However, she beat him to it. "Emily, I think we need to talk," he began, looking intently into her eyes and placing his hand gently on her shoulder. Emily didn't remember what Edward said next. At that moment, her mind went blank as he touched her again. He noticed her reaction, and his plan worked. Things got a lot easier from that point on. She pitched forward, losing herself in his embrace. It happened right on their marital bed. They lay together and talked for a long time. Emily tried hard to suppress the shame and guilt in her spouse that had consumed her during the first few moments of silence. But it was worth it, as she managed to relax. "Are you going to tell Timothy?" broke the silence Edward. Emily snapped out of her thoughts and frowned. "Does he have to know about us?" she replied. "He'll find out sooner or later anyway," he hinted cryptically as he continued to develop the topic. Some people didn't know, but Timothy didn't need anyone's confession to find out about their devious affair. Even before the trip, he had secretly installed a listening device in their bedroom. Despite the casualness of his thoughts, deep down Timothy was very concerned about Edward staying with Emily in his house. His intuition warned him of possible trouble, which was unfortunately confirmed when he eventually listened to the tape recording of his wife and brother. Upon returning home, Timothy felt depressed as the tape confirmed his worst fears. He entered the apartment feeling like a stranger in his own home. Emily was still at work, and oddly enough, Edward had left as well. Timothy refrained from calling his brother, knowing that Edward was probably reveling in the situation. "What a fool I was," Timothy thought grimly. Jen, who was helping him get his suitcase out of the closet, didn't react to his rudeness, and Timothy felt betrayed. Carefully gathering his wife's belongings to rid the house of her presence, he quickly packed everything up, wanting to take it straight to his place of work. He drove up to the saloon where his wife worked and unloaded several bags and a suitcase from the trunk. Emily's initial joy at seeing her husband was replaced by confusion when she noticed the suitcase normally reserved for vacations. "Why did you bring my suitcase here, Timothy?" asked Emily in surprise. "We don't live together anymore, and I'm filing for divorce soon so you can frolic freely," Timothy replied loudly, so that even the salon visitors could hear. Shocked, Emily tried to push her husband toward the exit, denying his accusations and begging him not to cause any more drama. "I have proof of what you were doing there," Timothy said sternly, "so I don't expect you in my house anymore." With those words, he turned and walked toward the exit. Emily finally realized that denying or avoiding the truth was futile. Angry at his last remark, she retorted by saying, "You know, Edward, unlike you, at least he knows what he's doing in bed. You don't have to pretend anymore." Timothy didn't even bother to turn around, which infuriated Emily even more. "I'll go to him. He's better at everything than you are, you useless asshole," she shouted. Timothy nonchalantly replied, "Try if you can find him," and got into the car. Unlike Emily, Timothy knew his brother Edward well, for they had grown up together. Edward had a habit of disappearing when he was causing trouble, making it difficult to find him. As children, they usually found him quickly by asking his friends. However, the situation was different now. Edward lived in another city and was independent, so nothing was known about his whereabouts. Emily tried to contact Edward to let him know that Timothy was no longer an obstacle, hoping to continue their affair. At some point, she realized that she had become another pawn in the brothers' ongoing feud, a painful attempt by the hurt younger brother to hurt the older one. It was a hard realization for Emily. Faced with divorce, forced to find a new place to live, and begin the search for a new partner, Emily felt despair. There was no turning back now. She needed to think about the consequences of her actions and where they might lead before it was too late.